Hello, this is Rashonda Thornton, the host of the Dietitian Against Diets podcast show. Before I introduce you to my guest, I want to introduce you to a particular company here in St. Louis. It's called Banner Road's Baking Company. They're known for being the world's best granola. And the reason why? Because all of their ingredients are organic. They collaborate with local companies and farms to bring in the community feel and make sure all of their foods are sourced through local farmers. They also package all of their containers very uniquely. They're all sustainable. They decompostable, and along with that, this person behind the curtain, the chef, she knows what she's doing, and she's passionate about making quality and healthy food. Go to their website, learn more about the granola, see their unique flavors at www.bannerroad.com, or you can find them on Instagram and Facebook at Banner Road. Well, hello, everyone. This is Rashonda Thornton, the Dietitian Against Diets podcast show, and I'm excited to introduce you to my guest today. Her name is Dr. Leilani Carver-Madalon. She holds so many different positions in regards to leadership, but I'll just kind of simplify it for now. Right now, I know she's the current assistant professor at Maryville University of the School of Strategic Communications and Leadership. She also uses this expertise in her leadership in regards to empowering others through effective leadership tactics and communication strategies. On top of that, you may have seen her, just in case, on other formats. She's been known as the expert on Forbes.com, on Hill.com, Fox 2 News, the national level, all the way down to Fox 2 News here in St. Louis on a local level. And last but not least, I had the pleasure of seeing her on stage last year in December at the TEDx TEDx Gateway Arch Women's event. And she was a dynamic speaker, very empowering. And I just had a great time watching her. The title of her TED Talk was called Scripts That Ignite Your Power. Not only that, she's also currently working on a book about leadership and empowerment. So we got a lot going on, but it's also exciting. So I just want to say welcome to the show today.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here, Rashonda. Thank you for having me.
Oh no, you're so welcome. I think I'm more excited than you are. But I have so many different things I definitely want to bring up and talk about. But one thing that stuck out to me when I was reading your bio was that you did a lot of work outside of the country, in different areas, and just if you can provide, if that to me I look at that as that's how you create a more of a well-rounded person, your perspective and just your view on life. I think it just changed the way you just interact with people. How much of your travel and what you've done in the past really kind of brought full circle to what you do now as a leader?
Oh, I think living outside the U.S. has hugely changed my view, and I encourage everyone who has the opportunity to do it. When I was in college, I had an opportunity to teach English in Taiwan. I couldn't afford to study abroad. I didn't have the money. And so there was a way to study abroad, sort of, where you would teach English. You would earn your way and they would pay for a plane ticket over and you could teach for a summer in Taiwan.
Okay.
So I did that. And when I landed in Taiwan, it was the most amazing experience because I had never been to a place where I couldn't read. And, all these different letters and experiences. And it was such an amazing experience. It changed my life. And I was like, this place is amazing. I didn't know such a place existed. And then it made me want to see every other place in the world. I wanted to go everywhere. I got bit by the travel bug. And I ended up living and teaching in China for almost 2 years and teaching there. And what it does, I think, is it lets you see there are other ways of being and seeing and experiencing the world. And I think that's very freeing because it lets you see the one way you were raised or how you see the world is not the only way, and it's not the right way. There are many ways to experience and be in the world. And I find that incredibly liberating. And it also helps you see and appreciate other people and how they experience the world and how they live in the world. And so I think it taught me empathy, and also taught me to really embrace experiences that are different from my own. And that's how I think it changed me. And I take every opportunity I can to experience other cultures. And we can do that here in the US as well. which is wonderful. That's one of the reasons I love our country, is that we have so many different cultures. And I think that's a really, really beautiful thing that we should
Yes.
appreciate and hold on to.
Embrace. I totally agree. I actually, right before the quarantine and everything, I went on a mission trip to Mozambique, Africa. We literally got back on the 17th of March. So, right, we got back in the country just in time. But
Wow.
the point the point I wanted to make was what you said about when you go to another country, you see the way, the lenses that they in which they live, what's important to them, it's amazing in a way that we as USA citizens, we have our own funneled way of looking at things, and that's not true reality of just what life is. So I feel it was very enriching. You have to see what's most important in their lives and what they could care less about. And so coming back here, I kind of made me appreciate all the things that we take for granted. Understanding a people is a people, and our goal should be is to learn about each other. What are our differences and find ways that we can grow together. So it was a very small scale comparable to yours, but I can really see what you mean about embracing and appreciating all the cultures and other ways of life. Yeah. Yeah. So was it a hard transition coming back, or did you just come back a new person? I'm sure to some extent.
It was. You go through reverse culture shock. There were so many things I missed. So food is one of the big things that you learn to appreciate in other cultures. There's still authentic Chinese food that I miss, that I can't find here. There is some that I
Mm-hmm.
can.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, Corner 17 on Del Mar has some really amazing, authentic Chinese food that is
Okay.
amazing. But there is this thing called ho guo, which is hot pot, that I haven't found replicated here yet, and so I miss that. But I miss Mexican food so much here. You can really find good Mexican food in China, which
Oh,
is,
really?
yeah,
Wow.
something
Okay.
we really take for granted. I love Mexican food. So that kind of different food is such a part of our culture, and
Mm-hmm. I
and
agree.
so that I really missed. What I also really missed, riding my bike everywhere and having bike lanes dedicated. And so those sorts of everyday experiences of walking everywhere. I didn't have a car, and so walking my bike everywhere, and I lost 25 pounds almost immediately when I moved there, just because of
Really?
the diet and because of
More
walking
movement.
and riding my bike. And I gained it. Oh, I gained it back like that when,
Thanks to American diet.
when all those burritos.
It just showed you again, just that life is just so different in different places, and everything from the food, the vegetation, their lifestyle, the geographical location, like how you move, travel, and it's totally different. I mean, that's the American way,
It is.
not in a
It's so
positive way,
interesting.
but
Yeah, I've been so blessed. I get to teach study abroad for short term for Maryville University, and right now, actually, I was
okay.
supposed to be teaching in London and Paris this summer, before COVID
Oh,
happened, and I got to do it last
yeah.
last summer. It was an amazing experience. I got to take a group of amazing women, and we interviewed leaders all over Europe, and it was fantastic.
And I was going
Diverse
to ask you
leaders.
about that. Yeah, because
Yeah, it was amazing.
when
And
you're
it's crazy. But
is
oh,
it
sorry, go ahead.
no, that's like when you think leadership, and it's wrapping your head around what leadership looks like in other countries. Again, I feel we're just like program conditioned to whatever few handfuls of leaderships we've seen. Like, what did you see in those women that was similar and different to what you see here in the States?
Let me give you an example. The head of Expedia groups, like Expedia.com, but even bigger, incorporating more of those groups, is a woman, and she's phenomenal. And what was interesting is hearing her talk about managing her life as in her personal life, and there really is this balance more in Europe than there is here, in this sense that work-life balance is taken much than it is in the States. Like, she doesn't
Mm-hmm.
go home and work all the time, even though she is a president of a company that's huge. I mean, don't get me wrong, she works a lot, but she's still, especially for European standards, but she's still like, she carves out weekends for her family and dedicates it to her family, which I thought was so wonderful. Like, how wonderful.
Intentional.
Yes, it was. And she was so intentional. I love that. So strategic and intentional, and very open and caring, but also very structured in how she made her time and prioritized what was most important in her life. And it was very clear her priorities.
Yes. What do you think that comes from? As I think about, when we as women here in the United States, it's like a guilt you feel if you're doing the motherly thing, or you bring it, family becomes priority at times. It's like that's just kind of the way we're taught, our culture. And then to see these other women in other countries, they are doing just as much, if not more, in their capacity professionally, when they are making sure that they're taking care of family first.
I think culture is a huge influence. In culture, like for example, in Norway and in Denmark and in Sweden, they give women at least a year off paid for maternity leave. So I mean, the value there, we're
Hmm.
talking across the board. I mean, all jobs, not just high professional jobs, like everyone. And so the value of motherhood, the value of having that time. And in fact, I think that what they've done recently is expanded to parental leave. So
Okay.
either parent could take it depending on who wanted it. And they had up to, it was either a year and a half, I believe, that they could take at any point, and they could decide who was going to take it when. So, I mean, that
Wow.
priority of the young child's life, I think, is really different. And letting the parents decide how they're going to take it, I think, is incredibly powerful. Whereas here, I know there's lots of places where women get none, and or zero paid. They might be able to take 6 weeks or 8 weeks, but that's unpaid. And I don't know how many families can go without, or people, if you're by yourself, can go 8 weeks on. Doesn't seem really reasonable. Um, I know
Yes.
that there are some
Comparable,
people,
especially.
yeah. I mean, who can,
I
so
would. That's
I
like
think
we
our
wouldn't even see
priorities.
ourselves having that opportunity here. Like that's
Yeah.
we would think 3 months, 6 months is golden. But
Yeah. I
comparable
mean,
to.
Maryville gave me 4 months paid, which was, I thought, when I had my child, I love that I got to do that. I mean, I felt really blessed that I got to stay home with my baby those 4 months. And then I hit summer, so I ended up getting even some
Okay.
more time. So
Yeah.
I was I was lucky. I feel like it's really hard in the States because we feel like we have to be everything as American women. Like, we have to, like, my I decided to stay home with her kids, and she feels guilty because she's not contributing to her family financially. And I have another good friend who works full time, and she feels guilty because she misses some of her kids' things. Like, she's not there at, like, her kindergartner being room mom, you know? And so it's like,
Mm-hmm.
no matter what you do, you can't win. And that stinks. Like,
It
it's so
does.
terrible. And I think everyone feels kind of judged, but I'm not judging anyone. I'm just trying to do the best I can and be the best mom. But we can't be perfect, and we can't do everything. I mean, our modern day lives kind of set us up in this horrible way that how do you win? And even that terminology, winning, is terrible.
Mm-hmm. It's absolute. Like, what does that really mean?
Right.
The idea of winning.
Right.
And it's and I can go all day with that, as far as just when you think win, what, like, that's win. It's like more of a it's a long, like, what's a long-term win versus a short-term win, and what are the consequences to
Right.
that? So are we really winning? It's kind of a paradox
Right.
when you think
Well,
about
and
it.
yeah, in other cultures, like for example in China, most of the time both younger parents would work, but the grandparents would raise the children. So, but in China, people retire much earlier. You're forced, not forced, but often you have to. Well, I don't know. You kind of have to retire when you're 60, when you're a woman, or 65 as a man. So they're free to help raise younger children, and so that's how it's built in. And they often live together in the same houses, so they have different floors often of
Mm-hmm. Okay.
houses or apartments, but they live together. So there's communal cooking. So, like, grandmother would or grandfather would cook, and then you would come home. So you would go to work, come home, dinner would be ready, children would be taken care of. And so that's a little bit easier of a, I would love that. A little
Yes,
bit
be
easier
very
of a
nice.
balance, you know,
I
if you
think
have
everyone
a
would
group,
win with that.
yeah, a group mentality, you know, where you have multiple, but then you also have to live with your in-laws or your parents. So there's that
True.
as well.
Just
So
caveat.
yeah.
Well, that sounds like you had a great experience, even just to expand the idea of how women, you know, every understand that we are all different, but how our perspective is skewed in so many different ways, and just how that affects what we think we can do as women, whether it's someone what they've told us, what we see as a model, what we grew up with. I mean, it's so many different things that shape just our next steps. And just, I mean, I think that's what, to me, that what stands out when I hear you're talking about empowering and helping people to know they have the power. That's what empower means. But they had to figure out in their own way. Like there's no cookie cutter way that defines empowerment. You have to be able to understand like what works for you and how can you be your best self in the capacity that you're in.
And
So
be
when
comfortable with that. You know, I think that
be
was,
okay with
I think
it.
as American women, it's what I found is that I think it's the hardest. We have the most pressures and the most to do than in any other country I've seen. Like our perfect mom, our perfect woman has such a high bar, whereas in other places it's not so high. So we just have to throw all
Hmm.
that out and redefine for ourselves. It's exactly what you were saying, Rashonda.
True. Yes. Do you feel that when you and your this reminds me of your TED talk, do you feel all those pieces came together and you were able to express this in your talk?
I hope so. I felt like I was able to express that you have to find your own power
Yes.
because you can't, the only thing I can control is myself, right? And how I respond to things because I can't control anybody, anything else. I definitely can't control my 2-year-old. So, and how they're going to respond, how she's going to respond to things.
Don't let her know
So
that. No, actually
she's
do let
about
her
to
know
turn
that.
3 and I have a three-nager, right? This is
Oh,
what I,
okay. Gotcha.
wow. We're in that place, right?
Uh-huh.
So we are working on it. We are working on it. But it's I can control myself and how I respond to things. And this has been very reassuring to me during this pandemic time is like I can't control everything else. There's I can't control if my school is going to start and we're going to be on ground. I can't control very little about that, but I can control myself and how I respond to things and what I do. And so where my power is. And then by that, I can influence others. So that's where my power comes. But I have to be sure of myself and I have to start here because if I'm not good here, I'm not going to be good anywhere. And so it's that grounding. I think that is so
Mm-hmm.
essential. And when I get
Mm-hmm.
all worried about all this business first, then
You
I
lose
don't
you
do
lose your
well here.
grounding. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I have to be grounded before I can make a difference with others. I had a great friend. On the airplane, when you're on the airplane and they say mask will drop, you have to put one on yourself first before you put it on
Mm-hmm.
your child. Because if you air, you can't help anybody else. I love that analogy.
True.
And
Yes.
so,
And while you're on that topic, this one thing that I always, when I'm working with clients, I'm helping them understand how to weather whatever struggles that they're facing. When it comes to just our whole life, from our first breath to our last breath, there are elements in our life, people, situations, incidences that we have no control over. But we're so fixated, I always speak for women, trying to fix everything. We're trying to always fix something that's forever changing. So we're
right,
in this like struggle of just wanting to fix everything because that represents perfection. That represents I'm
right.
doing good, I'm doing right, all of these catchphrases. But the paradox is that there's only one thing that we can control out of all of this. And like you said, it's yourself, it's your choices, whether it's your health. Of course, I equivocated to nutrition, how you feed yourself. You have every control relatively to how you take care of your body. And we
Mm,
always feel like we don't have control of that. We don't have
mm,
control of our food when that's the only thing we have control of. We try to control, we put energy and control of everything else that we have no control of. So
mm,
understand, like you said, like only way that you have to build that foundation, so you can stand on it. And once you build that foundation, and you standing on it, that's your solid ground. And you can always go back to that because that's all you really have to control. And to me, it allows you to let go of the things you can't control and just work with it as it comes, but you still grounded, you know?
That's
So
so powerful.
it's very similar, it's very similar concepts in what you're saying, like how I approach when I'm working with people, because people feel so vulnerable, so inferior to their food choices, but it's really there's something else that they're inferior to, and it's really themselves. But once you start empowering yourself in what ways that works for you, and just start laying those bricks, that's what you can start standing on. And it makes a world of a difference in how you perceive life, how you interact with life, how you deal with things, with people, everything, because you realize things you can't control, and it takes away you trying to control it. So totally agree. That's why I was all on the edge of my seat when you were doing your TED talk, because I was like, that's what women, we need to constantly hear that language. So and be surrounded by that and seek it and know that we are that, or we can be that, versus all the things that we are given that we didn't really ask in our lives. And I think it's like we had to steady build, because there are things that are steadily tearing us down, whether it's memories,
Right.
situations, people, we have to find ways to surround ourselves so we can keep building and knowing that we can. Yeah, totally.
That's really beautiful. And I had never thought about it in the context of feeding myself. And that's true, because if you aren't healthy and nourished, and I get hangry.
Oh
if
yeah.
I skip meals,
I know what
I
you
am
mean.
hangry. And that's really important, in that feeding yourself and that's a really important part of self-care, is power, and that self-communication and self-care is power
Mm-hmm.
as well. What we're telling ourselves, what we're feeding ourselves. Yeah, it all goes together. It makes sense.
Yeah, yeah. One thing, and while we're on this subject, and especially considering what people, we're all in this together. That's like the famous hashtag, which is great. Helps us to connect right now with each other and be more empathetic to each other. But we all are in this, and we're all dealing with our own individual stuff in different ways,
Right.
And so one thing that we're all human. And this is all right now we're juggling. We're trying to figure out how fast to juggle, what to throw out of the juggling pile, when it's trying to bring something else. Just so many moving pieces. And so it makes us, we are off kiltered. And again, because we're human, we're supposed to be off kiltered, and I think it's okay to kind of lose some of that balance. But having the ability to work on what route it is to kind of find your balance, I think is important. So, I mean, I know for you, I mean, you got kiddos, you got a
Mhm.
family, and the work. Just kind of tell me how you have found, how have you recognized some of these areas, these little holes in your life that has kind of gotten bigger because of this pandemic, and just kind of how you find yourself as a human, trying to work on mending those.
Well, I have a perfectionist problem that I have to check. And so I find, and I notice when I'm starting to get revved up, and that usually ends up me working really late at night, and me not making great food choices, and drinking too much caffeine, and doing some of those behaviors that I don't like. And I saw that happening when my job switched to at home, and my husband's job switched to at home, and then our childcare stopped. and and so that was a big challenge, and just trying to figure out our new rhythm. And it took about a week or two to figure it out, and I thought that was too long, because I had it in my head, okay, we got to get this going, we got to figure it out, we got to have it done. And I should have given myself more grace and more space to get that going. And like my first class on Zoom, we had 4 days to figure out our
To get
classes
it.
on ground and get
Oh
them on
my.
Zoom. And I had never used Zoom, and I'm pretty tech
Okay.
savvy. So, I had taught online before, but this was synchronous instead of asynchronous. And so there were all these
Mm-hmm.
different things. And my first class was a disaster.
Were
I got
the students pretty like easy on you, or or did they make it worse?
most are really kind and gracious. By the end of the first week, I
Okay.
had it down. We were good. Classes were back. We were golden. But the first one, like I got them in breakout rooms, and then I couldn't figure out how to get them back, and then and then my computer crashed, and so it was just
Oh,
a total storm. And so I had a meltdown. I'm crying, not with the students, but afterwards, I'm like, oh, this is just terrible. And then my daughter's like, what's going on? And it was tough. It was tough. And so I think just giving myself a little bit more grace and space. And speaking of tough, my daughter's figured out how to
what's her name?
unlock doors. So this is Josephine. Can you
Hi,
say
Miss
hi?
Josephine.
So
She's like,
with with the challenges of this, we have to give ourselves grace and space and not
hmm
have it in our head so rigid. And that's been my challenge to myself. It's like you got to give, like it can't be the same. It's not going to be the same. And so really allowing for that to be okay. And
yeah.
it's not perfect, and that's okay. That's going to be okay.
A colleague of yours, I won't say his name, but that's who because I think I told you I teach at Maryville as well in the exercise science department. So a colleague of yours, he made a statement that I thought was just kind of let us know that we got this. He said humans are adaptable, and I think that again, recognize we are, giving yourself grace, but just know we'll get it together. It's like
Yeah.
a little work, maybe longer than what we want, but we're adaptable, and I think we have shown that in these times. I mean, just think about how just this conversation right here,
Yes,
when
we are adaptable, and that's a great thing. And
yeah,
by the end of a week, my students and we had great connection. Our classes were good. I brought in some guest speakers, and we had really good conversations. And so, that's amazing that we can do that. And so it went really, really well. So,
yeah,
and we figured it out. That's the great thing is that, especially when people are in it together and
hmm
everyone is rooting for each other, I think at the end we had a wonderful class, and students were really kind, and it just went really well.
I think we're learning to lean on each other, in a
Yeah.
way that, be a little bit more patient, be more understanding. I just really feel like some of these superficial like ways that we divide ourselves, I think they're starting to kind of crumble a little bit because, even just when I go to the park, I swear everyone speaks, not just hello, how are you doing? Like a full greeting, and I just feel like we've been, I don't say forced to pause, we're in a position where we have to just pause and just really appreciate what life is. And I really feel like some of these, that to me, that's some of the silver lining that's kind of coming in these moments. And I think we need it, I think we
And
totally need it.
we do, and I think we miss each other. Like, it's so
Yeah.
lovely to talk with you. It's just
Same
so nice
here.
to have this conversation, and it's
hmm
wonderful to just listen to you and hear you and just be with you here in this space. It's just such a joy.
I totally feel the same. And it's like, I feel like we just because we haven't physically just like really met, I really feel like we have a couple of cups of coffee multiple times, because you just have that, when you people that are like minded, they just gravitate towards one another, and it just
Mhm.
clicks,
Mhm.
But no, I totally feel the same way. When you were, what I'm curious about, you say you're working on your book, could you give us a little bit of insight on like what's this book is going to be about, like, or what has inspired you to even go to the next step and create a book?
I had no plans of writing. It was one of those things. It feels like the best things come out unplanned sometimes.
hmm
And what happened was I had this group of women in a leadership class at Maryville, in graduate women, and it was a Foundations of Leadership class, a graduate class in our Strategic Communication and Leadership program. And they were just phenomenal. And they said, what if we were to go? I was mentioning they should be interviewing, part of their assignment was interviewing amazing women in St. Louis, informational
Okay.
interview with amazing women. And the assignment just was phenomenal. Their results were fantastic. And so they said, what if we did this internationally and we did a study abroad together in London and Paris and did it across Europe? And I was like, yes, let's do it. So we made it happen. And so we did this. And what we're finding out is the results were so good, like these strategies. So I've read about not every book on leadership, but a lot. Almost all
Mm-hmm.
the research literature on women in leadership, and every book on women in leadership that I can get my hands on, I've read. And I was hearing new things, practical strategies I've never read about and that I had never heard before. And I was like, wow, I really wish I had had these strategies when I first started. Like that was helpful. And
Mm-hmm.
so I started writing, I was writing them down as I was going, and I just kept hearing more and more and more. And I thought, I got to share these. I can't just sit on this knowledge because it's so good. It's so good. So the book's
Mm-hmm.
about practical leadership strategies for women, and it's very practice oriented. So how do we move forward? How do we help? And some of it's based on my research and just from teaching and my experiences as well, and grounded in research, of course. So it's evidence based, but practical stories and people sharing their stories with me. And so I've kept that up. So when I have moved on and can't just keep going, I've kept interviewing women, and I'm going to
Okay.
keep doing it. And so I don't know when I'll stop, but when I stop, I'm going to put it all together. I've been clumping it together as I see categories emerge. And
Mm-hmm.
so like parenting is one category, like being a parent and working and how to negotiate that, like salary negotiations, practical things for salary negotiations. That's another area that's emerged. Things like what to do if you have a terrible boss, what to do if you're sexually harassed, those sorts of things that are just practical strategies. And I was like, these are great. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm putting them all together in a book.
Got
That's
it.
the book.
You know what? There is a book that I read about a year ago, and it was, I forgot what it's called. It's like 100 women that makes over $200,000, something like that. And it
Ooh.
was a book of it. And I actually find that book and send it to you because it was a book just like you're talking about, where they have these women's stories that are CEOs, or they're over accounting
Mhm.
firms, and they're before that, their story was maybe they worked for a fast food restaurant for years and decided to go to school, and by that they started meeting other people. It showed their journey, so it gives women like hope, like you can be this woman, and then you hear her story and how she did it. And it was very, to me, but then you seeing these stories, these women are real. It's not just
Right,
a story, a fake
right,
story. And so it inspired, it gave it, just like you're saying, it gave me like tactics and ways to think differently, and just like, oh, so that's how it happened for her. And not saying I'm going to mimic that, but it just creates a role model that you can just see these women's stories, and you think, oh wow, she went from here to here, which
yeah.
means if she can do it, I can do it.
One of my
And that sounds
favorite,
to me like that's what your book is going to be. It's going to
yeah,
be like that, and it's going to be so great.
oh, thank you. One of my favorite women that I interviewed, very, very, very high up in her organization, just below the CEO, and she got fired when she was like 30. And I was like, you got what? She got fired for for performance, and that blew my mind. Like if you can get fired and not right out of school, like she'd been working a
While
while.
you're up there, yes.
Yeah, and still end up being just hugely successful. And
Hmm.
that gives me hope. It's not like you make a wrong move. One of the things she said that I'll share with you if you don't mind, that I
Mm-hmm.
loved, is she said that you really got to get clear about what your why is, your purpose, and you're all about the why. And that's why I thought I would share it with you. She said she really is clear about what she's good at, where her strengths are, and what her like where she feels like she can make the biggest difference. And if any job or anything that she does doesn't fall in that, she now says no. So
Hmm.
now, younger people, I would say no to this, like, because when you're younger, you need to say yes to lots of things to get experience. But as you get older, I think when you get clarity about what your purpose is and what you're here for, I think that's really wise. That wisdom of it's not my why, if it's not my purpose, if it's not in my mission statement. She had a personal mission statement. if it doesn't fit in that, I don't do it, because I know where I can contribute the most, and I want my time
Mm-hmm.
to matter, and I want to leave a legacy. I thought that was really beautiful, and I had never thought about my time that way.
We're not, again, we may not see those models, so wouldn't even think that way. But now that makes so much sense, because then you know where your passion, your specialty is, and that's where you're going to thrive. That's where you're going to thrive, and that's where you want to be. That's great. You know what, I know it's gonna be a while before that book comes out, but I want to be one of the first ones to get it, because I
Well,
just know
I
it's
will
going to
definitely
unpack
send
so
you a
much.
copy, Rashonda.
It's going to impact so much. Unfortunately, we are coming to a close. There were a few other areas I wanted to talk about, but I just think we're just going to have to do it again. That's what's just going to
Oh,
have to
I'd love
happen.
to.
Yes, but I do want to create opportunity. I know you have a website, and I know you have other things that's more about you, and I want people to just kind of be able to kind of read up on you, know more about you. Could you give us a little bit of information about some of the other things that you are doing, planning to do? How can they reach you and things like that?
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I'd love that. So, my website Carver.com. It's Leilani Carver, Carver.com. And if you go there, you can see my TEDx talk that I got to do. Information there. My book's information will come out from there, and a lot of interviews that I have gotten to write or comment on from places like Forbes. I just had a recent one on women in leadership is right on now. And additionally, I just the minimum. Let me see if I can do this. Midwest Marketing Conference, Midwest MDMC,
Oh,
Midwest Digital Marketing Conference. Thank you.
okay.
I was on a personal branding panel, and it's going to be released on Wednesday at 8 a.m.
Oh,
So
wow.
it was a
This
really
Wednesday
fun
coming up?
panel. Yes, this Wednesday. So I was on the panel. If you're interested in the MDMC or .com, and or it's Midwest Digital Marketing Conference, through UMSL actually hosts it. Uh,
Okay.
it's a great conference, and so I was able to serve on one of their personal branding panels with some phenomenal people. They were amazing,
Oh,
and
my.
so great advice that they gave on personal branding. If you're interested in that, other
I'm
things
going
that
to
are
look that
coming
up.
up. Let's see. That's really what's on the horizon. I had a lot of things canceled because of coronavirus, but we're moving forward, and I teach at Maryville and love teaching there and feel very honored to be there. So I'm very happy to be at Maryville University, and it's so colleague.
Yes, yes. Well, I will tell you one thing that, you know, whoever, I'm sure you can vouch for this, just kind of how you said, like your plans for the year and all the different, perhaps speaking engagement and events and opportunities you would have had, you know, it's just put on pause. And it's
Yeah,
perhaps put on pause while other things are growing and changing and evolving. So when that time does come, it's going to be out of the gate. So
yeah.
I commend you. I'm going to look forward to seeing all the different things that you're doing. And I want everyone out there, after you hear this podcast, after you see the podcast, go online and find her and just see exactly what it means when she's talking about women leadership and empowerment. So again, Dr. Leilani Carver-Madalon. No, yeah, I said it right.
You did,
I
you
love
did.
how I
It's a
love how you got
long
your name
name.
in there too. I love how you keep your name in there too. But no, I appreciate you being taking your time to just tell your story, talk, show how you're helping other women and how they can, make their goals turn into reality, and that's very powerful. So I really appreciate you coming on today.
Well, it's my pleasure. I am just so honored. You do an excellent job of empowering women and really building that foundation to be powerful. And it's just been my pleasure. Thank you so much for
Yes.
having me.
You're so welcome. You're so welcome. Well, guys, you have it. Rashonda again, the dietitian against diets. Remember, it's never about diet, but just the diet mentality. First, love yourself. Then, second, love food. Thank you, guys, and I will see you next time. Well, thanks for watching the Dietitian Against Diets podcast show. As we're closing out, I want to give thanks to a company here in St. Louis called Prairie Farm, who is actually a farm-owned company since 1938. They are helping to make a difference, especially now to your community by supporting charities, and they want you to have an opportunity to pick your choice of your charity. Right now, they have a campaign coming out called Our Caps Your Cause program, where if you buy a gallon of milk or half a gallon, take the caps off, go to the website, and you can contribute that particular cap to whatever charity that you are wanting to send it to, and they will match it. Go to the website to learn more at www.prairiefarmsdairy.com, or even just learn more. Oh, also, don't forget about the coupons. You go in there and grab a couple of coupons while you're there. Also, learn more about them and what they're about and how they're unique by going to their Instagram account and their Facebook account at Prairie Farms.